Hello, community, and welcome back to another Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita podcast. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, C-Suite Trusted Advisor, Board Director, and Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategy Consultant, helping members of the C-Suite and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. This morning, I am so excited to have with me two very special guests. I want to make sure I introduce them properly. The first is Ms. Scharrell Jackson, a high-profile leadership coach and international keynote speaker, and the CEO and founder of Leadership in Heels, and Dr. Catrena Elliot, the senior HR exec of a Fortune 100 company. Ladies, welcome to the show. I have been looking forward to this Christmas program. You look like a present, and you look like a contemporary candy cane with the red and the white going on. I love having you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for
I
having
want to
us.
start with a really simple question. What does belonging mean to each of you? Because I know in the work that we do, we all use that word a lot, but what does it mean to you? Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
Oh, aren't you sweet? I guess when I think about belonging, what it means to me is that I not only have a seat at the table, but I have a voice. Belonging means that I'm not only invited to the party, but I'm asked to dance.
Mm-hmm.
Belonging to me means that I'm not in a space where I am any longer feeling uncomfortable, but I feel comfortable. And when I belong, I feel comfortable. I feel free to be who I am, and I don't have to code switch or walk in the imposter syndrome. I can just be authentically me.
I love that. I love that answer.
Yes, belonging to me means I can show up as my authentic self. I can bring all my gifts and talents to the table without fear of what are they going to think of me. I am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So when I show up as me and bring others along and invite others who may not feel like they belong to the table while we're in the midst of the conversation.
You use the term code switching, and we hear that a lot. What does that mean for people who've never had to code switch, and what is that like?
I don't know anybody who hasn't ever had to code switch, but I think that what code switching is not feeling the freedom and the comfort and knowing that you truly can bring your authentic self, and therefore you show up in alignment with who you believe others need you to be or who you believe that you have to be in order to accomplish your goals and objectives.
Okay, that was really sophisticated. Can you break that down a little bit simpler? You said showing up the way people need you to be and the way you think you need to be. Say that different.
So what it means is that sometimes you shift into becoming who you believe others need you to be. In other words, I may have to play down who I am and dilute my being because somebody in the room with me doesn't have a level of confidence to accept me for who I am.
There it is.
And so in fact, for me not to overshadow them, I have to dilute who I am. Or I may feel that who I am is not enough or maybe too much. And therefore, I may simmer down or level it up and not just be my true self. To code switch means that you move in alignment with the environment based on your thoughts of what you believe the environment needs versus moving in alignment with who you are regardless of the environment because of being who you are and who you need to be.
I want you to take that a different route, Dr. Catrena, because when I hear that, and thank you for explaining it that way, because sometimes when you move a certain way, you don't really think about what that means. Thank you for that explanation.
Absolutely.
But that sounds like interpersonal situational awareness, and we talk about that a lot in the workplace.
Yes.
Say some more about that in a different way.
So if I think about code switching, I think about putting on a mask and looking at the audience that I'm there with, and it's like, okay, so how can I fit in the mode? So a lot of times in corporate America, and when I'm coaching my execs, you know, they feel like people who's coming to the table have to fit the mode of the environment. Absolutely not. You know, so code switching is just that, assessing, I'm going to fit the mode, and dimmer my own light. When in fact, what we want people to do is just show up and be themselves and take off that mask and then let people fit in as they are at the table.
Well, what if some people's idea of fitting in is, well, I'm real blunt and I'm real direct and you just have to deal with it?
I don't necessarily think that has anything to do with code switching, though. I think that has to do with making sure that you're refining your skills to be the best version of yourself. There's a differentiator between leveling up and becoming the best version of yourself versus shifting into somebody that you're not. You know, people will say, well, I just am who I am, and that's okay. You can be who you are. But the reality of it is, do you want to be the best version of yourself? I mean, what's your end game when you entree into space? Is it to be a repellent or to be a magnet? And so we have to really think about that when we're approaching people. So to me, refinement is helping us to become better. Code switching is shifting into someone that you aren't for the sake of the audience.
This was good. And we've been here, what, 5 minutes?
Right.
So my next question is this. Again, going back to belonging, how do we see belonging as a gift to the organization in terms of both the culture and the bottom line? Because in my experience, I'm still interacting with leaders who feel like the two are mutually exclusive. Well, I need to be focused on the bottom line, but people help drive the bottom line. And sometimes we forget that age-old adage that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and midnight snack. So we were talking about how the gift of belonging in the workplace can also impact the bottom line.
Absolutely. So when you're thinking about belonging and the bottom line to an organization, again, it goes back to, I always say, diversity at the table, diversity of thought. So when you have all of that happening, it's not a single view, right? So people are able to see blind spots. People are able to bring other opportunities to the table to benefit the bottom line. Because if you just have the same group of people, same diversity, same mindset, no newness, no type of newness that's being brought to the table, then the bottom line is going to remain status quo. But when you have belonging and diversity, then you're able to say, you know, we can increase revenue this way, and maybe the next person would have never thought of that, right? But because you have that diversity of thought at the table, it really does increase the bottom line.
Between the two of you, can you give me a concrete example that some business leaders might be able to identify with easier? For me, when I talk about the bottom line and belonging, I remind people that the community that you serve, the community that you want to buy your goods and services, you might want to think about how that community interacts with your product. And to get that thought, you have to have that representation at the table to impact the bottom line and expand your market share.
Absolutely.
How else can we help deliver that message? Because my concern is leaders still see that the two do not go hand in hand, that either I make sure my people feel good or I'm hitting the numbers, but they really do go together.
Yeah, I think it really just depends on what you even consider to be the bottom line. I mean, when I look at bottom line, there's economics and there's performance. Each individual has their own personal bottom line, and when we can help people elevate their bottom line to the point that when they perform, they soar, then they bring higher productivity and commitment to the organization. And then there's organizational bottom line that's tied to the net income of the organization. So I think that the investment in your people when it comes to belonging is about bringing people to the table, consistent with what you said, that can cover your blind spots, but most importantly, that can penetrate marketplaces, to your point, that you can't, that can entree into conversations that you can't, that can bring opportunities to the organization that you can't. So there's an expansion of knowledge base, of sales, revenue, and net income that belonging and diversity brings to the table. But it starts with the individual. So I think that when we invest in the individual bottom line of our people, which means that we start to treat them like they belong, then we build trust. And with trust, it takes you anywhere you want to go, because people will forgive you for your mistakes, they will give you grace, and they will work hard for you. And ultimately, when people believe in you because they believe that they matter and they belong and they trust you, it's a natural impact to their personal and your professional bottom line. So there's no way that diversity is not helpful to organizations. It's just a lack of understanding by many leaders on how they can leverage belonging and diversity to impact their bottom line.
And that is a perfect place to end this first conversation. That was rich, community. I hope you were taking notes. If you weren't, make sure to show up the next time with paper and pencil as we continue this real conversation from the C-suite. I am excited. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to hear this podcast again, you know where to go. Head to my website, dranita.com. On the landing page, click the link that says Keeping It Real Podcast. And while you're there, check out my services and my resources. And please remember to get in the flow. Follow, like, and overshare. any podcast that helps you reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Until next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.